But when it gets that hot, there's nothing you can do to prepare for that. And I've had races before in a couple spring to mind. Austin, the World Endurance Championship 2016. A lot of drivers had to go to the medical centre and some to hospital with heat stroke. And
however, and I am not taking anything away from him. It's more than just a driver. It's the team behind him.
In the last 3 races, McLaren have scored 104 points.
Wow.
The team in second is Red Bull, and they've got 75. Hello and welcome back to the On Track GP podcast, where today we are going through everything that happened at the Qatar Grand Prix this weekend. We had a sprint, we had a race, we had a lot of track limits, and we had a lot of drama, and we're going to get into it. And I'm joined today, of course, by Richard. Lovely to see you as always. And also today, Rachel as well. Lovely to have you back. Rachel, how are you?
I'm very well. I felt a bit cheeky coming in here saying, God, it's hot outside. I've never known such heat when we're going to talk about the race. It's like, yeah.
Well, there was a lot of drama, and Richard, it'll be very interesting to get your take on that because you've driven in cars in that kind of heat, which must be pretty unpleasant.
It's you can't actually describe it. Like there's a point where when you're driving and you're in a normal temperature, there is a point where you feel the physicality of it, and that's what you train for. But when it gets that hot, there's nothing you can do to prepare for that. And I've had races before in a couple spring to mind. Austin, the World Endurance Championship 2016. A lot of drivers had to go to the medical centre and some to hospital with heat stroke. And I remember being in that race, and your brain almost stops being able to compute to your body. And I remember once I had an oversteer moment, and I caught it instinctively, but then my body reacted after I'd already caught it. So just your brain doesn't really process information properly. And it gets to the point where it is just downright dangerous. I mean, you saw the comments of the drivers, some of them throwing up, you saw the videos, everyone collapsing afterwards. And at some point for me, it becomes a little bit too dangerous.
Well, we'll have a talk about the race generally later, and about where it lands in the calendar, and also geographically, does it make sense to kind of change it? But for now, let's go to the main highlight of the weekend, which is Max Verstappen officially. I mean, we've known since about I'd say late March that he was going to win
two of the first race.
win the World Drivers' Championship, but he has now officially won it. He's unsurpassable, and congratulations, 3 in a row. What do you make of generally what Max Verstappen has done over the last 3 years, and also this last season?
I mean, you can't fault him for how great he has performed this year. And you compare it to his first win, he's done amazingly, kept his cool, been incredibly focused. However, and I am not taking anything away from him. It's more than just a driver. It's the team behind him. It's everything. It's everything, not just him, that's come together and worked fantastically. And I think, this is a new era of Formula One with the aerodynamics. Obviously, the RB19 has brought that to the table. Without Newey joining the team, I don't think Red Bull would be where they are. So it's great for Max Verstappen, but he's a big cog in the machine. But it comes down to everyone working together, which other teams do need to look at.
I mean, it's been unbelievable what Red Bull have delivered this season, and we'll talk about Sergio a little bit later, but let's stay with Max for now. How far away is he from being an all-time great, do you think, Richard?
He's still, he's definitely entering the conversation. There's no question. But I still stand by what I've said, is that, he is in a position where he's got a great team around him. And, obviously the car is very, very, it's superior at the minute. Okay. When Sergio's having a good day, he gets the most out of it and he's struggling. There is taking nothing away from Max. I mean, at times this year, he kind of reminds me of the Terminator. You just can't stop him. Yeah. He's just this unstoppable force that's coming. And, remember like some of the moments through the season, Miami, where Alonso said, yeah, lap 25, he's going to overtake me. Shock. It happened. Yeah. And, obviously 3 titles in a row, but I still think that if we're talking about the all-time greats, firstly, you have to remember, okay, Max has done a lot of races, but there's a lot more races now than there used to be. When Senna, Schumacher, people like that were doing their seasons, there was only 16 races. So in terms of all the stats, yeah, but it's very, very impressive. But weighing it up against those, obviously, if you've got a good car, then that period lasts for longer. Now, I think we will see a period where Red Bull won't have the most dominant car, because that's the ebbs and flows of Formula One. And, historically, the FIA and FOM have always tried to target the dominant team. We saw it with the Williams situation at the end of 1993. We've seen it with the Ferrari situation at the end of 2004. And there will be a way, and Red Bull won't always have the best car. And then we're going to really see how good Max Verstappen is. But as I said, don't get me wrong, this year, as I said, he's been like the Terminator sometimes. Like Terminator 2, where he's running after that car. And he's just unstoppable. That's what it looked like at times,
What a comparison.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I like it. Strong imagery.
Yeah, it really is.
Absolutely incredible, and fair play to him. And now he can just sit back, relax, and enjoy the rest of the season. I don't think he will. I think he'll still dominate it completely. But let's have a look at McLaren. Okay, so this, again, a double podium for them this weekend, talking about the main race on Sunday. But also on Saturday, Oscar Piastri got his first win. Ooh, a little bit awkward. He's got a win before Lando Norris, which is a little bit like, nobody really saw that coming. What do you think Lando Norris's response to that is going to be? Do you think inside he's going to be absolutely fuming that Piastri, the rookie, has got a win before him?
I don't think he'll be fuming. I just think it'll add more of a fire to his belly. It was amazing. I mean, Piastri really is the rookie of dreams. McLaren must be rubbing their hands together. And obviously it didn't happen overnight for Piastri. He had to take a year, waiting to join a Formula One. I think it's going to be... I love the two of them. I love the fact that we've got great 1 and 2 with these guys. And I've said for a little while, Piastri will eventually take over from Lando, being, you think Lando's number one, Piastri's number 2. Piastri's brilliant at what he does, and he's so young and still very calm, composed. I wouldn't be like that winning. This is why I'm not many reasons why I'm not a driver, not just that. I think it'll give. He's a driver at the end of the day. Lando is. He's gonna want to win, of course. He's not gonna be like, it's for the greater good of the team. He wants to get that win in. So it can only be a good thing to make a driver not completely rest or think I'm the number one and that's it. I think it's injecting life into McLaren, but they've got enough life right now. They're brilliant.
I think he needs to get a win. I think Lando Norris has to now go and make something happen, even if it's in a sprint. We've got a sprint in Austin in 2 weeks' time. Richard, what do you think about Lando Norris?
I think one of the things which I thought was really, really good, and it says a lot about the way that McLaren is and the harmony within that squad at the minute, was Lando. He made some very, very minor mistakes at the weekend, and we're talking millimetre things. He didn't do anything stupid, but his pace was there the whole weekend, and he was able to just come out and own up about those, very openly. And that shows that you've got a management structure, and you've got a unit within that team that believes in their drivers, that they have the confidence to say that, because normally drivers do their absolute best when they're under pressure or not in a comfortable environment to hide it. I think the infamous one that is easiest to remember is Nicholas Latifi taking the wrong circuit at Suzuka in practice and blaming the car.
Oh, that was a low moment in Formula One.
That is a driver who is not comfortable he's not comfortable in his surroundings and feels like he has to defend himself. And to be honest, I don't think Lando will care one bit with Oscar winning a race, because when he's been consistently beating Oscar through the year, and it's good for him that Oscar's pushing him now. And to be honest, it looks like it's raised Lando's game. And honestly, when you're in that position, and every other driver is just another helmet. You don't really care who they are, as long as you know that you're doing your job to the maximum, which I think Lando is. He won't care. He'll just be trying to get that first win. And it's annoying for him, but Lando still had an absolutely cracking year. There's no question.
Generally, for McLaren this season, I mean, I don't know if I can ever remember a mid-season resurgence better than what they've done. You remember when first race, right? Lando Norris did about 6 pit stops, and you thought they were going to be backmakers for the season, and then suddenly something changed. They brought the upgrades, and now they're definitely the best of the rest. Out of the last 3 races, who is the top scoring team?
It'd be McLaren, wouldn't it?
It is McLaren. Yeah. With how many points?
Ooh.
How many points have McLaren got
I'm not good at mental arithmetic.
In the last 3? It is that they are the top scoring team.
73.
Okay, 73.
I was going to go a little higher. but now it scares me.
Go on.
I'll go 80.
Okay, 80. In the last 3 races, McLaren have scored 104 points.
Wow.
The team in second is Red Bull, and they've got 75.
Blimey.
So they've scored nearly 40 points. No, sorry, nearly 30 points more than Red Bull.
I mean, that's
in 3 races.
That's incredible.
That's really impressive.
That shows the level that McLaren are at.
We were talking about it before we started filming, and I've got, through some connections, I'm very close to someone who's very senior in one of the Formula One teams, and we always have a chat after the first pre-season test. And he said McLaren are absolutely screwed. They're absolutely nowhere. And to be honest, after your first test, within about an hour whether you're going to have a good year or not, or whether you're going to start having a good year. So for them to have that resurgence, I think you're right. I can't remember any team coming back like that. I'm thinking I'm having to go back to the 80s. I think Ferrari in 87 maybe, but I can't, not in recent times.
Yeah, and particularly with so much technology, there's so much to do. It's not like, let's just, I don't know, lift the car up a bit and see if it goes quicker. There's so much data to go through. Fair play to the people in the McLaren garage, because they've done, and also they did the fastest pit stop in history this weekend. A 1.8.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's brilliant.
4 tyres.
Yeah.
1.8
Quick
seconds.
Fit ain't doing that.
No, they're really not. They're not coming close. They're really not.
I mean, that is exceptional. Let's move to the other team beginning with M, Mercedes, where we saw a little bit of spice in that first corner. It looked like it was going to be a really big weekend for Mercedes, a massive point scorer. Big opportunity for Lewis to breathe down the neck in the Drivers' Championships of Sergio to go and get second. He's put on the soft tyre, and, we saw what happened. There was a big incident that ruled out his race in the first corner. Rachel, what did you make of it? What was your initial thought when that happened?
Do you know what? Obviously, Hamilton, being the sportsman that he is, has come out and apologised. But, and there is a big but here, he started on softs. And originally I was like, surely the incident here starts before the contact. Surely the team had some kind of strategy meeting, and George knew, okay, if Lewis is starting on soft, he's going to be faster off from the start. Why did Russell put himself in that position? And I do find George Russell a little bit arrogant, if I'm absolutely honest. He goes on about it's for the team, but I don't think it is. But then you look at when it was, say, Hamilton and Alonso back in the day, and I see a lot of George Russell in Hamilton at the start when it's got that
100%.
Aggression. So and then since then there's been reports that there was a strategy meeting, and so therefore did George not take that on board? So, I don't know, it's a little bit, and I guess we'll never really know, because things do seem like they are falling apart slightly within Mercedes, but I think there's
Richard, what did you make of that incident?
I think it was an interesting one, because we had first-hand evidence from the sprint on Saturday just how effective the soft was at the beginning of the race. I mean, it was massively faster than the medium. Plus, also we had the drop-off. Now, there's absolutely no question that Lewis squeezed George and didn't leave George enough room. Absolutely no question. But I think that it was still going to be a long shot for George to be able to overtake Verstappen. And I think George could have backed out of that, slotted in behind Verstappen, and then waited for Lewis and Verstappen to have their inevitable side-by-side battle, and then maybe pick up the pieces. So whilst it was 100% Lewis's fault, and he left George with no option, I do think that George could have looked maybe at the bigger picture. And of course, as Rachel said, this 100% would have been discussed in a strategy meeting before the race. Whenever you got teammates starting near each other, you always talk about various scenarios. So I think as I said, 100% Lewis's fault, but I expect as a bigger picture, the situation could have been managed a little bit better.
Yeah, interesting. Let's move to the other side of Red Bull with Sergio Perez. And yes, your face sums it up pretty perfectly, I think. Just to sort of remind you of the series of events. So he was knocked out in Q2 on qualifying for the main race on Friday. And then in the sprint race, he was involved in a collision with Nico Hülkenberg and Esteban Ocon, which took him out. And then he was forced to start Sunday from the pit lane because they had to fix his car under Parc Fermé rules before the race. and ended up scoring a mighty 1 point. I think he had 3 penalties in the end. And Christian Horner came out with a pretty damning interview after, which I'll tell you some of the things he said. He went on longer than this. But we have to talk to Checo after the race about why he had such a hard time with track limits. It was a tough race and a tough weekend for him. Luckily, Lewis didn't score any points and Fernando didn't score much either, so he's still second. He desperately needs to find his form again. Desperately, but for me being the key word there. What do you make of Sergio Perez?
Do you know what? But one thing as well, what Christian Horner said, that he's admitted that Red Bull no longer have a pair of drivers like Formula One rivals Mercedes, Ferrari and McLaren. And I think that says it all. That kind of says, Perez isn't, we all know he's not performing up to where he should. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's kind of, that did pinch a little bit. It's hard because Perez is Perez and there's a soft spot for him. And I think anyone, I think everyone probably has.
Guy.
Yes. and we're all so happy for him when, Red Bull signed him. And it was just, but he's just not, he's not up to it. I don't know how else to articulate it in such a way.
P45 on the way. Do you think he's on his way out for next season?
Oh, yeah.
You don't think he'll make it to 24?
No, and I don't. It's a business at the end of the day. I mean, I know he's probably bringing in a lot of money through sponsorships. However, it's still a business and the team could be, a team to be reckoned with if they're 1 and 2 were 1 and 2 all the time. So I don't see how they could have him next year. There's so many other drivers.
Do you agree, Richard? Do you think he'll be there next season, or do you think he'll be on his way out?
I mean, if he finishes second, then he's got a very strong case to be there because he's gone, well, I finished second, and what more do you want me to do, basically? And then I think he'll be on very thin ice going into next year because the problem will be, as I said, there will be a time when Red Bull don't have the dominant car. Look at how much McLaren have caught them up, and there'll be evolution into next year, and that's when you're going to need somebody who's seriously there. And Christian's statement is right. They don't have. It's almost starting to look nearly as bad as the Alonso Stroll situation.
It's not far off. It's such a good comparison. It's not far off.
It's not far off. And this weekend just summed it up. The sprint race, to be honest, I think he was an innocent victim there. Ocon, probably needed a bit more spatial awareness in that. But saying that, having driven cars like that myself, you will be amazed at how little you can see in one of those, especially on side to side. But there's just no zip there. And the worst thing is now he's got to that stage. It's almost like what's happening with Logan Sargent, whereby he's now starting to try too hard and the mistakes are coming. So he's driving through frustration. I tell you, he needs the end of the year more than anybody.
Yeah,
but if he finishes second in the championship, then I can't see how Red Bull can replace him.
And he probably will. It felt like if there was ever a moment where Lewis would be able to catch up with him, with Sergio starting from the pit lane and Lewis starting third, there was a real chance for Lewis to dent 18, maybe 15 points into him. And I think Sergio's got away with one, to be
And the other thing is now
honest.
that Red Bull have sewn up both championships, there might also be the fact of Max actually helping out Sergio a little bit.
Interesting.
Whether Max will actually listen to the orders and do it is another question. We've certainly seen that he's not too keen on that in the past.
Brazil last year?
Brazil last year, yes. But there is that possible option.
The last... Oh, sorry, no, please.
No, I was going to say, I still don't see Perez, wherever he ends up this year, he won't be in Red Bull next year.
Who goes there for you then?
Oh, I mean, we have there's a lot of good rookie drivers out there.
But they've all the ones in the past came victim to the Verstappen curse, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. And that's what people were joking about with Perez.
Yeah.
Going
Gasly,
to Red
Albon,
Bull.
Perez have all been
Yeah.
battered by him.
But I think there are other drivers. I mean, I don't want to say Danny Rick because
I mean, Formula One is also one of those situations. It's like football. Everybody has a contract, but there's always a price and a way to get everybody out of their
100%.
contract.
you can get anybody out of it. Yeah.
So I'm quite sure that if Red Bull came and said to Alex, "Hey, Alex, do you want to have another crack at the whip and a new, mature Alex Albon going up against?"
That would be good.
He would
That'd
be.
be
They
very,
would be
very
able
good.
to get him out of that contract.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if
100%.
I'm Alex
like
Albon,
that.
I wouldn't touch Red Bull with a barge pole.
No, agreed. Not at this stage in his career.
Forget it. He's
Yeah.
doing really good things with Williams, and they look like they're having a resurgence. So
And there'll be
I'd
other teams that will come up for him in the future. At some point, Lewis is going to retire.
Yeah. He'd be a shoo-in at Merck. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like
I
the
love
Ferrari situation. If the rumours are true and Sainz goes to Audi, there's going to be very, very big seats and opportunities will come for Alex. And I think Alex, at the age he is, he's having a good career at the minute. He's very happy to stay where he is.
What about Liam Lawson?
And it's too early for him, 100% too early.
think?
100% too early to be put in that seat. I mean,
I suppose it's a very powerful seat, isn't it?
Yeah, I think he will be in there. I think he's definitely good enough, no question. But it's just, he's 19 years old.
So young. Oh, wow.
I mean, he's done so well since coming in, Liam Lawson. That was his last race, which is a shame because he finished plumb last and didn't do so well in the sprint either. So it's a sad way for him to leave. But overall, I think his F1 moment was really strong.
Yeah.
I mean, just remember, if Liam Lawson came into if Liam Lawson's in the AlphaTauri in Austin and he ends up on the podium, he won't be able to drink the alcohol. So that's how much time that guy has.
Yeah, do you know what? Yeah, let him wait. He doesn't deserve that seat.
The last team I want to give a little shout to, out of nowhere, is Alfa Romeo with a double pointer. Six huge points for them. Bottas taking 4 and Zhou taking 2. Amazing, right?
Brilliant.
How did that happen?
Ruth Bunscombe, I think that's how you pronounce her name, who deals with all the strategy. Brilliant. Excellent work for her. Yeah. I think, obviously, the drivers played their part, clearly, but it all comes down to the strategy.
Yeah, incredible.
And an early pit stop, she did fantastic.
Do you know the other thing as well? Shout out to Guan Yu Zhou, because I feel like he's been getting a bit of stick, like when his contract was coming up and everything. And he's just been getting on with his business just very silently. He's been keeping Bottas very, very honest.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the criticism that he was getting, when his contract was coming up, was completely unjustified. And I think he's actually done a very, very solid job since he's come in.
He stays in his own lane, and that's very similar to Lando, as in like not reacting. It's all about staying in your own lane. Let everyone else get on with things. There's always going to be drama. There's always going to be politics, especially in Formula One. And when you're at the top of your career, there's always going to be politics. He stays in his lane, and I think it's a great one too. And I think he's a great driver. I like him.
I have to say, Alfa Romeo probably on paper, when you look at it, have the most boring driver lineup in Formula One.
And car. I mean, it looks amazing, but it's not quick.
What I mean by that is Bottas and Zhou just get on with their business. Yeah. They're just complete and utter professionals. They go, they don't make huge mistakes. They do what they're supposed to do. And I think both of them really don't get the credit that they deserve for that. And we're seeing it with Sergio Perez. We're seeing it with Lewis and George as the odd mistake. Obviously, we saw it this weekend. But those two just continuously, year after year, okay, well, in Bottas' case, not so much Zhou's, they just get on with their job. And they're very solid, And I can't see any reason you'd ever think about replacing those two at the minute.
And Zhou Guanyu started 19th and finished 9th. He went up 10 places. I think there's a shout for driver of the day with that sort of performance. So, fair play to him. We saw, as we mentioned at the beginning, physically unbelievably difficult race yesterday, and this is just a few of the things that happened. We saw Logan Sargent retire because he literally felt so unwell, and then you cut to that helmet cam of him when he retires, and his eyes are like all over the place. Like, God, he was not well. Esteban Ocon threw up in his helmet, and then carried on and finished the race. Awful. Stroll almost passed out getting out of the car. Albon went to the medical centre. Russell was saying that he almost fainted during the race. I mean, unbelievably tough physical conditions. And this race, we didn't have it in 22, but in 21, it was 6 weeks later. So 6 weeks cooler than this point in the year. I mean, there's an argument of, should we be racing in those hotter conditions?
I mean, it's 50 degrees, I believe it was in the cockpit with everything. It was crazy heat. I mean, is that safe for drivers? You've got to start looking at it like that. Is it safe? I think it was Lance Stroll that said he felt faint in there.
He felt like he was passing out.
The problem is drivers will never, we're wired, we will never, ever say that it's too difficult or it's too hot during the race. We will go to the point of passing out and crashing rather than say that. And but there does get a point where it just becomes completely mental.
So I don't know either. I mean, logistics, can they do this race later on in the season? I'm not quite so sure. Do it on a different circuit, maybe, so it's not quite so demanding from the drivers.
Well, that's it. It's and also on top of that, because there was no element at all in any of the race of, okay, I can just save my tyres, because there was the mandatory 18 lap stop. So they had to drive basically it was 3 sprint races back to back. They had to drive at maximum
like endurance
capacity.
racing. They kept comparing it to like Le Mans at times.
Yeah, I mean the difference is like whenever we do these races, the really difficult ones is when you've got a closed cockpit, because then the temperatures are just completely insane, and that's when it gets really tough. But when we have an open cockpit, when I've done hot races, as I said, Austin, Brazil, Bahrain spring to mind, we're always kind of managing the tyres. And when you're driving probably 3/10, 4/10, half a second off the pace, the difference to go and find that extra half second and doing qualifying laps for the whole stint, it's like doubling the amount of energy needed. So I think they probably would have been okay had they not had that three-stop rule.
Yeah.
But I they do need to think about it. Of course, Formula One is a huge juggernaut, and there's obviously a lot of other things to consider: marketing, time of year, etc., etc. But they do need to have a bit of thought of the drivers in this. Abu Dhabi, for example, they have it in November, December every year, and there's never a problem with it.
True.
Much cooler.
Just having it a few weeks later, maybe. And they're starting to have a look at this, because also when you look at the green side of Formula One, the schedule is ridiculous. The fact that we're now going to go all the
green
way.
side.
I mean, the last two races, we go from Vegas to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
madness.
absolutely, and Brazil. I mean, it's a joke.
And
It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
and we've had Bahrain and Jeddah at the beginning of the year, and now we're in Qatar, and Abu Dhabi's in a few weeks, but we're just going to go to the other side of the world in between. And but they are starting to use a bit more common sense with the calendar next year. As I said, having spent so much time in Japan, they're moving Suzuka from typhoon season, which I don't know why on earth they have it then to
It's
to
madness when
April.
you say it like that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's literally typhoon season. I've had it in Japan before, where in 2 months we had 3 typhoons in that period.
Yeah,
And I mean, typhoons are like full on.
Yeah.
And so they do need to think about it. And
Yeah.
I think the green side of it is under a bit more scrutiny. So they will group these races in cooler periods. Obviously, the European block has to be in the summer, because otherwise every race will just be a wipeout.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Where do you see the season finishing now? Who do you guys see taking second in the constructors and taking second in the drivers' championship as well? Because, well, here you are. I'll give you some points, but for me, I think Mercedes will lock up the second in the Constructors Championship. I thought for a moment it looked like Ferrari were on a little bit of a rise. Carlos Sainz didn't even start yesterday, and Charles Leclerc finished where he started and kind of didn't really make much of a splash. Red Bull have obviously won it with 657. You've got Mercedes on 326 points, Ferrari behind on 298, Aston Martin on 230, and McLaren now only 11 points behind Aston Martin on 219. Where do those next four, Mercedes, Ferrari, Aston Martin and McLaren, how do they end up come Abu Dhabi?
I think Mercedes will be second.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
I think that Ferrari will be third. And then I think McLaren will be ahead of Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Is there a shout that McLaren, bearing in mind that we've just said in the last 3 races they've scored 104 points, could Ferrari push for third and be chasing down the tail of Ferrari? They're about, let's sort of call it about 80 points off Ferrari at the moment.
I think, the problem is the races that are coming up don't actually suit Ferrari that much, and they suit the McLaren concept quite a bit. There's a few anomalies, though. I think Ferrari will be very strong in Mexico. Because you're less reliant on downforce there, because the air density is so small, because it's at altitude, and obviously it's 90-degree corners. They've been very good there. You've got Brazil, which is just a complete madness. God knows what's going to happen there every
Brilliant.
year.
Can't wait.
It's always something
It's
like
just
Lewis
chaos.
coming from the back and winning. Like you never know.
Yeah.
But every race there, in every category, doesn't matter whether it's Formula One, every race at Sao Paulo is just completely mental for whatever reason.
Love it.
I mean, we had a World Endurance Championship race there. I think that half the field didn't finish. We ended up winning the race by 18 laps because everybody else in our category crashed, including us.
Love it.
So it's just Brazil. It just has that habit. But no, I think that I can't see Ferrari. They seem to have circuits which they're good at. They were good at Baku this year. They've been good in Singapore. They don't seem to have any evolution, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Mercedes are very consistent. Obviously, McLaren are coming in now, but they were just too far at the start. And Aston Martin, I'm sorry, but if Stroll has a few more weekends like this, then they've got no hope.
You in agreement, Rachel? Do you think that's the order it ends
I
up?
totally agree with you. And you describe Ferrari very well there. You do feel like they are quite now stagnant. You're not going to see any real improvement, any greatness from Ferrari. And I kind of feel like that coming into next year. I know we can worry about next year a bit later on, but yeah, they don't kind of...
No, we'll be back. We'll be back next year.
Not when you see, again, the progress of McLaren. Mercedes will be back with a vengeance.
No, we will
Sorry.
be as well. I believe it. We are going racing next in Austin. We expect to see Daniel Ricciardo back. I mean, he'll do anything to race there because he loves the place. He'll race it on a horse if he has to, like last year. Richard, just talk us through a little bit about that track, that Austin track. What can we expect?
Awesome. It's absolutely awesome. Just everything about it, the atmosphere around the place, the city, the fans are awesome. Obviously, a really good combination of high speed, very similar to Silverstone and Suzuka in Sector 1. You got the very technical Sector 3. The interesting thing is with Austin is over the years, they've had big issues with bumps. And the bumps, even though they've tried to get rid of the bumps, they keep coming back because I think it's because of the extreme temperatures they have there. They have extreme weather in the winter and they have extreme weather in the summer. So honestly, every year they go back, the bumps get worse. So I think a lot of it will depend on how well the cars ride those bumps. But for me, it's one of the best races of the calendar. And also, Formula One in America becoming ever popular. I think there was 400,000 people at the race there last year.
That's madness.
It's
Isn't it?
completely insane. And the Americans, they do their sport properly. So I think it will be, unfortunately, I hate to say this, I think it will be a Max Verstappen whitewash again. I'm looking forward to seeing what Lewis can do there. He's historically been very good there. I think he won a championship there. He had the infamous gust of wind incident with Nico Rosberg. The weather can always be a bit tricky there as well. We have seen rain there. But no, I'm really looking forward to Austin. It's one of my favourite circuits in the world.
Same for you, Rachel? Looking forward to it?
I'm really looking forward to it. And it's the hype, isn't it? Like you say, with the way America and Americans do sport, it's a performance. It's a show. And that's what you get. You got it from Vegas. You get it from Miami. You get it. Yeah, it's just going to be fantastic. There's going to be a buzz around it. And I'm really excited to see what Lewis can do there. I still have hope that Lewis can win a race.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's quite a statement. But I don't want to back away from that statement because I've made it all year. Do you know what I mean?
If it rains, he definitely has a shot.
That'd be
Obviously,
brilliant.
Lewis is excellent in the rain. Tell you the one thing I don't want to see at Austin, though, speaking about the Americans doing an event, we don't need those ring announcements. Like they did in Miami.
Well, yeah. It's not that kind of sporting event.
When they called Kevin Magnussen bad boy turned good, I was like, what is going on? What? And Kevin Magnussen was sort of walked out like, oh, okay, if you want.
And didn't they? What race was it where they paraded the people like Horner and it might have been Miami.
I think it was Miami.
Wouldn't be a surprise, would it?
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. Some of the cheese, they can kind of calm down a little bit.
I've got an interesting question for you guys, though. Out of all the drivers this year, who would win in a rodeo ball contest?
Something I think about often.
Who's scrappy? Esteban Ocon?
Oh, that's a good shout, actually. That's a good shout.
It needs to be like little and light.
Yeah.
So you can do it.
Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, Yuki.
Yeah, you're not Yuki. Little slight, he'll do it. That's good. Don't know what to do with
Tsunoda's
that.
going to win something this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he is done.
Well, we have a week off racing, and we are back coming to Austin in 2 weeks' time, and we will be covering it, of course, all right here on Track GP. Rachel, Richard, thank you very, very much for joining and giving all your beautiful insight. And we will be back very, very soon for another episode. Stick with us. We are on Track GP. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you very soon.